finding time in his busy schedule to come and speak to us again. It's always a pleasure to have him. So the first item on the agenda this afternoon is apologies for absence.
I haven't received any apologies, Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Leslie. So the next item on the agenda is disclosure of members' interests. Other than what we've already disclosed in our annual thing, it doesn't look as though anybody has got anything else to add, so that's great. So we're now on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Or you agreed that they're a true record, and can I virtually sign them or actually sign them when the time comes? Now, I have indications from 2-3 people that they're happy, so we shall move on to the next item, which is item 3, which is the forward plan of cabinet decisions. I think it's probably Sean that's going to contribute to this. Is that right?
Yeah, it is, Chair, but I've got nothing to add. There's only one item, I think, on that forward plan for pre-scrutiny, and that's the discretionary grants for adaptations to housing and disabled people, and that's going to health and wellbeing next week, Chair. So nothing to report for this committee. Excellent.
Well, could I just ask a question? I'm not sure whether this is the appropriate place or whether it can be answered here, but there are decisions that are made that aren't on this forward plan. So do all decisions that the cabinet are making have to be on this list, or are they invalid if they're not? I'm thinking particularly in this instance of the way that the grants panel applications, you know, they changed the criteria, and that kind of just went through cabinet, and I don't think any of the rest of us had any pre-knowledge of that, and it certainly wasn't on a forward plan anywhere. So I was just wondering whether that is appropriate or not. And that's not my phone ringing, by the way.
Chair, I mean, the only comment I can make is this is the schedule of key decisions that the cabinet have been asked to make. It's covered by the 2000 Local Government Act. There are obviously other reports that the cabinet consider that aren't necessarily key decisions, so I can't comment on anything else that has been through that process, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. It's just yes, Leader.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you wrote to the business chair about this, and I have asked that we get you an answer on the specific question that you've raised as quickly as possible. But when I chaired scrutiny, I always used to keep an eye on what was coming up, Sean, and if there are issues that any of the members who... sorry, is there something wrong with my speaker here? I think there is. Okay, don't worry.
Excellent. We kind of get the gist of what you're saying, Leader, so
yeah,
it's just me having a gentle poke. Just what you're saying, Leader. So
yeah.
it's just me having a gentle poke. Oh, someone has their microphone on and we're getting feedback. That's what it is. Someone has their microphone on and we're getting feedback. That's what it is. And I think it's Colin Horncastle needs to turn his mic off.
Chair, just picking up what the leader just said there. Clearly, there are issues that go through the decision-making process that doesn't necessarily fall within the forward plan. And I think if we can raise that in the next chairman's group, how best to sort of pull those together so that members are aware of them in a better way.
Excellent, thank you so much. I knew between us would get that sorted. So the next thing on the agenda is scrutiny of cabinet reports, and the only one we have today is the COVID-19 response and recovery update at 4.1. We have the report. I think the way this is going to work is we're going to ask Mrs. Lally to talk to it, and then maybe the leader might want to offer an opinion afterwards. I see him shaking his head in agreement, so that's fine. So Daljit, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing this report to come. So really, what we have done here with this report is give you an update as members for the period from 23rd of June onwards up to date. Now, obviously, this report was written in September into October, so there are further updates. So I thought I would just do two things, really. I would give you a short update about current circumstances and where we are. Then I would just touch on some areas from the report which are specific to this scrutiny committee. Obviously, if members wish to ask anything about any of the other elements, that's fine too, and I'll do my best to answer those. What we are planning to do is take to the different scrutiny meetings the different elements for discussion, but obviously that doesn't mean members can't ask about the other areas that aren't within the scrutiny remit, and it just means members have the opportunity to do that. So as you can imagine, in the general update, it is a very fluid position currently, and as a council we took some measures working with our colleagues in LA7 to ask government to assist us with some restrictions and arrangements which would enable us to, wherever possible, protect the public and support the NHS. Critically, in the arrangements for both local and national government, one of the key aspects of any work we are doing is to try and ensure that we protect our population first and foremost. Secondly, that we keep our business and our economy going and ensure employment arrangements are in place, or that arrangements are put in place to support people with employment type issues or business grants, etc. And thirdly, it's critical that we support our vulnerable communities especially, and one of the key factors for us is to protect the NHS bed base. And as you can imagine, for us that is essential that Northumberland do ensure we have, wherever possible, the required bed base. And we are very lucky in that respect that the arrangements we had in place from March onwards have really assisted us to plan. That's not forgetting the unfortunate circumstances of the number of deaths that we have had, and each of those, you know, we pass on our thoughts to family and friends of those people. And also it's important for us to be mindful that we learn from those arrangements, particularly in things like care home arrangements and protecting vulnerable people at home. So we are currently in local measures of tier 2. You know, I'm happy to say that we feel that we have in place some measures which are supporting our communities and also our business. And I'm sure the leader will say later, so I won't touch on it too much, but we are in a position within our discussions with government that at present we feel tier 2 is the right place for us to be as a council. We've kept that unified county position because it's important for our whole population. There are areas of the county where numbers are lower, and you know, if it was a different arrangement, they may be tier 1, but I think we have to take a view on that in terms of county responsiveness that helps all of our population and supports, whether it's our rural areas or our urban areas or our mixed areas, to enable people to be able to feel safe and feel supported, but also to be able to, wherever possible, go about their business. So we have local tier 2. I'll be frank, we do have discussions regularly, sometimes twice or 3 times a week with central government. How they happen are our directors of public health for our 7 local authorities, along with the chief executives, have discussions with our central colleagues, so from the Cabinet Office, from the local government department and from the NHS departments and the Cabinet Office, along with the medical director or his or her deputy from the centre. So there is a lot of background information and work that goes on practically daily, and this includes weekends too, to ensure that we are putting forward a Northumberland position, and that we are looking to ensure we have the right support measures in place. As I said, it is a very fluid situation, but we feel Tier 2 is bedding in. Our numbers are less than our counterpart local authorities, and we've been very clear that we feel Tier 2 is where we should be for the time being, but obviously that is regularly reviewed, and at the end of the day it will be a central decision considering NHS bed availability about any decisions. At present in Northumbria Healthcare, we have regular discussions with our medical directors and we look at the bed base, and we are supported by the NHS with our position around Tier 2. And our public health team, very ably led by Liz Morgan, who regularly briefs meetings and members, we are very clear that the numbers that we are working with are as sound as they can be, and we are keen to ensure we keep that work going. So in terms of some specific areas for our community services and place scrutiny committee, there were one or two things that I just wanted to touch on. So local services, as most members are aware, they've adapted very well, and we are looking to have a seamless service throughout the future period over winter. Obviously, a business as usual is critical, so winter services programme, ensuring road repairs, bridge repairs, etc., and ensuring that we work forward as in terms of keeping those very critical services ongoing. As you know, from June onwards, particularly from my last report, we have managed to keep those services in place, and it's important that particularly the health and safety arrangements and the risk assessments that we ensure are in place. The team are currently working on some areas, for example, where things like Christmas markets are being looked at in individual towns and villages. It's important that we strike the right balance, that, you know, wherever possible, we will look to support traders and services, but obviously that has to be in a really safe way with proper social distancing, traffic arrangements, and sort of ensuring things are properly social distanced. So there's a lot of work ongoing. Second area I just wanted to touch on is around enforcement. I'd just like to acknowledge, like local services, the excellent work. The public health, public protection team have just stepped up, and you know, we've done a lot of work with officers to look at different pieces of work to make sure that all of the essential work that we're required to do around enforcement, particularly for COVID-19, is in place. The bottom line is, for us, we need to ensure wherever possible the health and safety of the public, and we are working with businesses and organisations to ensure that. And you know, we need to be clear, our potentially slightly lower numbers than others in the region are because our businesses, our communities and our organisations are actually doing the right thing and following the measures. And it seems a simple thing to say, doesn't it? Because actually we all probably in our personal lives think about what are the sensible measures, who should we be visiting, what do you think we should be doing, how do we shop? It's essential that our public protection department assist communities with that. So that's critical too. I'll just move on a little bit to communities together. We have, since virtually day one of the arrangements coming to place in March, had such a transformation this year in terms of working particularly with our voluntary sector, the not-for-profit and the charitable sector. We have, at the last count, 17,604 shielded residents, and they've been supported with over 9,000 interventions, looking at accessing government support and other arrangements. We have, it has been a healthy mix, really, in that we've had people who we've supported right through from March because of their vulnerabilities. We've had people who just needed a bit of signposting and support to get to the right place to enable them to be more independent. But, you know, we can't thank highly enough the community organisations and the VCS charitable sector who've stepped up. We were always clear, we didn't think this was something that the council would look to do to people. What we've done is, through Maureen Taylor and her team, have established through the partnerships and the networks, very clear support and arrangements. One of the critical things is we, you know, received a grant of approximately £367,000, which we've set out, worked with each of the partnerships in each of the areas, because, you know, we're a vast county, not everybody wants the same support, and not every community and voluntary sector infrastructure is the same. But over these months, we've worked very well with those organisations. They know what we can support them with. Sometimes that's money, sometimes it's staff, and we know we can count on them to have communities directly access that support. And recently, just in the last week, we've been very clear that support for either through county council budgets of member small schemes, or through support through communities together, we've supported families, particularly through holiday periods. So there's been a lot of work ongoing through the community hubs. The final thing I'll just say a little bit about is about the local testing sites. As you're probably aware, it's not our specific duty to operate those. That's through the Department of Health and Social Care. But what we do is assist the department by looking at the most suitable sites, for example, in areas for high demand for testing, making sure that they're accessible not just to people who have cars and can drive, but to many people who don't have access to cars, who, you know, may use bus or public transport, or need to be use other alternative methods. We've also tried to be careful around enabling businesses to keep working. So we've looked at trying to avoid key town centre or village centre sites. Now, sometimes we don't get a choice with that, and they do pop up sometimes and appear, but generally things have worked very well. Obviously, thorough risk assessments are undertaken for every site, and we ensure wherever possible that those arrangements are in place. So there's been quite a lot of work gone into that. We recognise there have been some issues, sometimes maybe a traffic issue, or for an example was a park that was closed via a town council. But working together with our partners, it's, you know, been critical. We all have, don't we, in all of these areas, just one goal in mind. That is, we want to ensure that our communities are as safe as possible. So really, I'm just coming back to the beginning there. I can't reinforce enough. These, you know, a lot of these are personal decisions by individuals in our county. The vast majority of individuals and families have absolutely done the right thing. We've managed our numbers. We've been able to demonstrate a really strong public health case for staying in Tier 2 at this time. And what we will do is continue to do that, because myself, the leader, and Liz Morgan feel that at present, looking at the numbers following testing, and probably a bit more critically, looking at NHS bed availability and the distribution of the community hospital beds, as well as critical care and intensive care beds to support, obviously, ventilated patients, we feel at present, along with our NHS colleagues, that that's the safe place to be, being mindful that we've got responsibilities to support our businesses and the economy too. And, you know, we do look at that on a daily basis and have that discussion. And, you know, it is a little bit subjective, some of it, but we can only do the best we can to assess the figures on a daily basis and make the recommendations that we do. I'll be absolutely frank, if we thought we needed to escalate a case around any other tier or look at that, we would, you know, obviously have discussions with members and officers too. But at present, we are at the point we are. So I'll just, if that's okay, Chair, pass over to the leader, and then more than happy to take any questions.
Excellent. For that full explanation, Dalji, really appreciate it. We'll then go to the leader, and then if people want to indicate, I will see you all, and I will shout you out as I see you. Leader.
Thank you very much. I hope I don't echo anymore, but I'll
no, you don't. That's
okay.
Fine.
Okay. I would like, as I did previously, I'd like to thank all the staff from the top to the bottom, if you like to put it that way, but all levels of staff who are working for the council and with the council, because each and every one of them has not let us down. And I can only say that, for example, in my experience, coming into this job, working with Kelly, who was covering at the time, I think she did a fantastic job, just coming straight in and being able to deal with everything as she did. And the way we worked together was exemplary. So I just would say thank you for that. And all levels, as I say, all staff at everything we do in the council. If I could turn, though, Mr. Chairman, to page 7 in this, on paragraph 2.6. Because I think we often don't sort of put into sharp enough focus the indirect effect that this virus has had on us. We have, for example, had terrible problems for people in care homes who have not been able to touch or feel or get close to their families, and that's been incredibly hard for them and also the families. And I think our staff in the care homes have done a brilliant job in being able to make things as easy as they can in the circumstances. There are a lot of families who are struggling in the county, and some weeks ago we put out a card which had contact details and telephone numbers for people to ring if they were struggling, and I think that was a very good thing to have done, because that was picked up very well by Northumberland Communities Together. And all members got yesterday a briefing note about giving you a bit more detail about what we're actually doing with Northumberland Communities Together and the great work that is going on there. But there's no doubt that health inequalities have come into a much higher focus, along with those people on lower incomes, and particularly around people who have lost their jobs or who are in danger of losing their jobs, and the mental health anguish that has caused. And that is something that we are working, Daljit, I think you'd agree, as much as we can on, again with partners, but we will see potentially quite a serious backlash so far as employment numbers are concerned, and the effect that will have on our communities. And we are doing the best we can to help with that. So I think all I would say, just to summarize, is thanks very much to all our staff. And there is a big job still to do, not just today and tomorrow, but next month and probably for months to come. And I think if we all work together, as we have done, members and officers working together, I think we will play a valuable role in trying to help. Thank you.
Well done, leader. Thank you. Councillor Hettle was the first to indicate. Just got to learn how to unmute himself and be away.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Chair, I was late coming in, but I've got a very unstable network connection at the moment. So if I go off, you'll know what the problem is. Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to ask. The first one is that, I mean, I agree with the leader there and yourself, Chair, about how comprehensive this report is. And it's certainly given us food for thought, I think, which is a more important question in terms of how we move forward and what solutions we can provide. Sorry. Two questions, though. I know that there's roughly a bit less than 22 million quid being given by government. The question is that enough to cover the costs that we've met with COVID and the plans you've had to put in place? That's the first question. The other one I'm looking at the moment on another computer, the Communities Together update, which is very good, I have to say. It's really, really good. I really appreciate that, I think, and most members will. But it's got a comment on here, which I'll read it out. The kind of using the funds, the 370,000 or whatever it was that Daljit spoke about. It's deliver safe, healthy, affordable food solutions for our communities, regardless of where they live or how much they earn. Now, given that there's a number of families on income support, on benefits, is that really the way forward? Have I read that right? Should we not targeting this money more effectively towards those families? For example, kids who have got free school meals and are denied that in the future. I just worry about that in terms of, you know, how are we targeting this money? That's a concern I have. Thanks, Chair.
Right. I think we'll probably have the leader come back first, and then we'll have the reasoned answer from Dan.
Oh, very, very droll. What I would say is, yes, it has affected our budget, Alan, and you're going to see when we get into the budget process in more detail just how difficult it's going to be. And we put that case to government, and both through this council and also through the combined authority. And I think Phil is actually on this call, I'm not sure, but he may be able to give more detail on the recovery and the ask that we are putting to government. I think so far as the free school meals issue that you discussed there, we are looking at contingency. Should we go into Christmas and beyond, and there is no change of central government view, we as a council are looking at contingency, how we may be able to help with that. So I trust that was reasoned enough.
Was leader, you're far too clever for me. Val, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's just a couple of things. I think in terms of the overarching budget position, as you can imagine, as with everything, whether it's spend or the efficiencies we were looking to gain this year to assist us with budget, a lot of that has changed over time, because some, for example, the income we would have expected on certain things hasn't come in. So we are working very carefully week to week at looking at our budget position and trying to look at what our position will be at the end of March. In terms of things we maybe thought earlier in the year we might deliver when the budget was set in February and haven't been. I think, we've had very welcome funding and support from the centre, quite a significant funding, but then that has balanced out. We've purchased PPE for every care home and every care home provider right across our service spectrum to ensure that there hasn't been a week where any of our care homes or services were without PPE. And that isn't any criticism of any national arrangements, etc. But at the end of the day, we as a council carry the responsibility of supporting our residents. So, there's been additional spend in those areas. For example, lost income. There's a range of things that we are working on. At the end of the day, we could all say, an endless pot of money would be great, but we live in a world where we've always known every year, I've worked here since 2007, and I can't remember a year when we weren't required to make some form of efficiency and balance the budget. So, we feel comfortable as an officer team, and we are working hard at looking at next year and how we will deliver the budget. I think the issue that you raise about the report and the reference to supporting vulnerable families, as well as you look at the affordability issue. I think I would just say, having worked with vulnerable people for all of my career, vulnerability comes in many different forms, and sometimes it's about affordability, sometimes it's about mental health and well-being, sometimes it's about isolation, and sometimes it's about core basic need and hunger. So I think the reference in the report is quite reasonable, because for me, if it means that, you know, an older person who is quite vulnerable, maybe having some difficulties with their mental health, if the only way we can ensure that they eat day to day appropriately and well is by providing them with a food parcel or food vouchers, we do that. You know, we don't, you know, and I'm not suggesting, Councillor Heppel, that you were saying, but we don't check their bank account, because through this period it's been really difficult, hasn't it, to ensure. And I've come across a lot of older people who've just really struggled with I mean, we've struggled, haven't we, with this whole thing and scenario. So those people will be struggling. So I think that's what that reference means, rather than the vast majority of the funding has been very targeted to more vulnerable families, income support families, older people, you know, with limited income. But there have been some cases where we have supported people who probably would have that income themselves, but haven't at this time been able to access it. So I hope that's a helpful explanation.
Do you wish to come back, Councillor Heppel? That was a very comprehensive answer.
No, I think the explanation is very good. I mean, I think my concern was in relation to free school meals, Chair. That was the connection I made there. But I'm happy with the explanations, both from Daljeet and the leader. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else care to chip in at this point? I don't see anyone else with a hand raised, so perhaps I could just ask a couple of questions, which aren't really questions, they're more observations. Just the statistics in the report are, as usual, full and deep. The only thing I would ask is that we make sure they're kind of verified and we know that they are the actual statistics. I'm not saying for any, you know, for 1 minute that they've been massaged at all, but if you remember, we had a number of COVID cases went down because of the way it was calculated. So, you know, let's make certain that whatever we're quoting is correct. I do think that this report needs to have wider circulation than it seems to have had. And I would just hope that we could somehow nuance it down to area council level, so that the people, you know, in Blythe and Ashington, or that specific council could have this report, but with the figures slightly altered to show what's happening there and what's happening in Cramlington and what's happening, you know, so the report itself gets rewritten in a way that it's more specific to the area council level, and it's circulated to them, just so everybody's got the. I'm just so pleased that, you know, that it's clear and it's got all these things in. I just want to make sure that everybody gets it and everybody understands it and everybody can apply it specifically to the area that they live in. Now, I've got no real idea how much effort would have to go in to do that. So it's you know, I'm not saying we should definitely do it. We should just think about doing it if it's, you know, if it isn't all that difficult to do. And the other question that I had about the report was, and it slipped my mind, so I don't know whether my vice chair can help me at this point.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't get into your mind, but
Nobody can. It went several years ago, Councillor Gallagher.
Can I come to the page 26, procurement at the bottom? And it says on the report, we continue to evaluate lessons learned from the crisis. What are the main lessons that have been learned from the crisis? I'll let you have a minute to think about that, but I've also got to agree with the chair when he says there's a lot of information in this document, and it's been, although it's not welcomed, it's been well written. The reality is we can break that down into the 5 wards and the areas, and you know that there, as we move on into the future, will be a lot of information for both ward councillors and towns to work on. So that's something that I think we'll have to work on. The other question that I was going to ask was around page 27, and I think you touched on it in your presentation. It was around crime and disorder. Obviously, that it covers a lot of things about the mental effect, you know, how antisocial behaviour is. And one of the things that I would like to see is a little bit more contact with the local elected county councillors, because they know the patches more than anywhere else. And if there is a concern, at least it's being highlighted on a local closed agenda scale that you know that the county can look at. But same again, coming back to page 26 about the procurement, it's around about you know, what have we learned in this crisis? Thank you.
Does Dan want to take that first, or does the leader want to come in?
Daljit first, and I can maybe add something at the end.
Excellent, thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. I think, as we've sort of indicated, you know, nobody would have wished for this, COVID outbreak to happen. I think, and we're mindful of that and the effect that it's had on our populations. I think there are a number of really critical and key lessons that we've learned. It's made us look in a focused way about what a council is about and what the services we deliver and the importance of those services to our communities are. I don't mean it negatively, but actually going through a crisis like this has enabled us to really focus down on the things that are really important and matter. Not that I'm saying we've been doing a whole load of things that don't, but it focuses the mind about the statutory responsibilities of a council, i.e. being to look at the welfare and support its communities. And that's about the broad brush of whether those are very vulnerable people, they're people who, you know, who are looking to gain wider employment or looking for education and skills support, or looking for care and well-being through public health or leisure, for their mental health or their physical health and well-being. So one of the biggest lessons, I think, is about us transforming through this experience for the future. So, you know, there are some things which we've realised, for example, you know, we always knew, but we know even more sharply that our staff team right across the council, for me, I've always known that our frontline staff are, you know, the best bit of us. Every representative out there, from people, you know, who cut the grass to who care for people in their own homes, who support businesses, who help people to get employment. We know we've got great staff, but one of the lessons we've learned is let's focus in and make sure we take best advantage from this awful situation to actually continue some of the great work. You know, Communities Together, it's really enhanced the service we get linked up with the voluntary sector or the charitable sector. It's also taught us this whole thing about how to use money wisely and be effective and be efficient. You know, there would have been a time where if we ever thought that the vast majority of the council, office-based council, could run on IT, and actually people could work from home and do their jobs just as effectively, if not more effectively, by a working at home arrangement, and the then impact that has on the efficiency for us in terms of concentrating frontline service, i.e. the face-to-face part of our business, for those services that really matter to our communities, and homing in on that. I think the other thing is really in terms of, more generally in terms of procurement, we've been very clear. We are looking at every line of spend, trying to be efficient, to save money wherever we can, so that we can actually move the majority of our spend to frontline service delivery and have a really lean and effective back office. So they're just a small number of the things, that have really, I won't go on for ages because I know haven't got a lot of time, but it's really important for our population to know that they are our priority, our staff are our priority, and the delivery of our services is critical. So we've done a lot of learning there. It's now to use the best parts that have come out of this awful situation to take us forward as a council and to ensure we can deliver within the money we have, but also a more effective and targeted services for maybe more vulnerable parts of our communities.
Thank you very much again for that full response. It'll be the leader, then it'll be Councillor Gallagher to come back, and then Councillor Carty, the leader.
Dalji is absolutely spot on all of that, and I agree with everything she said. I think one of the dilemmas that we've had to face as a result of this has been the coastal villages and the influx of tourists that we've had to Northumberland. Despite the fact we've spent quite a lot of money collectively on encouraging people to come to the county to visit us, when they actually do come, we actually aren't quite ready for everything they bring with them. So we have struggled with car parking facilities. We've struggled. We've done it, but it's been difficult. We've struggled a bit with the litter situation. It's shown how some of our roads are completely inadequate for the amount of cars that they've had to take. So we are actually going to have a kind of a little summit meeting quite soon, just to look at lessons learned about what we might be able to do better particularly around taking on more tourists in those coastal villages. I'd like to think that a lot of them enjoyed it and they'll come back, so it could be we might be just as busy next year. The second point I would make is that we are planning to have an agenda item, I believe, on all the local area council meetings. I don't know that for sure, but I did ask that we should cover COVID at LAC meetings, along with one or two things like local services updates and so on. So that ought to be happening. But for me, one of the things I've enjoyed most and I've found most useful is getting engaged with members better on a day-to-day basis in some cases. But I think the weekly phone-in that interactive meeting, whatever you want to call it, with members to get the COVID update and that exchange of views has actually been really useful. So that's the way I would like to see the council working. Of course, there is always, there are always people with different points of view, but I think that's quite healthy usually. And I think having almost all members involved in a meeting to talk about a serious subject seriously has been really valuable. Thank you.
Thanks for that excellent response, Leader. Brian, did you need to come back?
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you very much for your replies to Dalji and the Leader. Lessons learned, there are positives and negatives, and we've got to learn from both of them, and we can move on. We've also, in Daljit's address, mentioned Christmas and beyond, which is very encouraging as well, that we're going to work on them programs of getting, dare I say, free school meals and dealing with the vulnerable people. But Glenn, you also mentioned about coastal villages. Every area this COVID-19 has affected people in different ways. Yeah, and it's great that we're getting people up into the area, and it's good for the economy. But the reality is there's also a throwback as well. So, yeah, it's great to look at the coastal villages, but we need to look at all areas on an equal basis. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carty.
Hi, Chair. Thanks for letting me come in. I just want to agree with what Daljit said there about people working from home. I think it's excellent. You actually get more work done from home sometimes because you're not getting disturbed all the time. I do think if that's going to happen more, maybe something needs to be looked at how easy it is to contact somebody working from home. Because sometimes, you know, we're not always aware of who's working from home. And when we ring the phone number on the county website or the phone number for that person's office and they're not in, I think that just needs to be looked at a bit more on that kind of thing. And I do think that's a really good way forward for the council mind, right? The second thing is, I actually quite like doing these meetings online, right? One, it saves travel costs into county, so that's a saving for the county itself on petrol. Getting better at doing these because at first it was new to her, right? And I just think this is a massive bonus because it saves so much time and so much money, like I say, in travel. And I would like to see these continue. You know, I'm very well aware when it comes to full council and that in the future, that will be more difficult because of how many people attend full council. But in this meeting today, it's been perfectly well run. And I can't see any reason why we can't continue with this type of format. So I hope, Glenn and Dalji, that you'll perhaps take that on board and take that forward. Please, thank you.
And I shall take the compliment, Councillor Carty. Thank you very much. Before I bring the leader and Daljit back in, I have Rupert's indicating and Councillor Dunn's indicating. So I saw Rupert first.
Very interested in that, Eileen. And to a degree, I do agree with you, but I think the difficulty will come after the next election, because I would assume that there'll be quite a lot of new county councillors at that time, and they won't know anything about the format. They won't know any of the people. They won't, you know, and it's certainly, it took me 2 years to kind of find out what was going on, to be perfectly honest. And, you know, it's like a new job and a big school all at the same time. And so I think that's going to be difficult to address, I think, in you know, like the new term, as it were. So yes, we can do some of it, but I think it's very important that people get to know each other, to be honest, and I think make the whole thing a lot easier.
Thank you, Rupert. I've got some bad news for you. I've been doing this 30 years and I still don't do anything. So, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Councillor Sanderson just for a bit of clarification about the Coastal Summit? I did hear in a previous meeting that invitations to attend it were going out to parishes, villages within the AONB. Are the coastal villages beyond that, for instance, Camas, are they participating in this? Because it's not in the AONB, but it has been quite badly affected, I think.
Do you want me to answer that?
Is that all right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly which parishes and towns have been invited, but I think primarily it's around the AONB area, Liz, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah.
I'll find out and I will come back to you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that certainly the likes of Camas and Duridge would like to be included in that.
Yeah, I would agree. So if you leave that with me.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now we seem to have drifted off subject at the second there, but you know, I'll let that slide. But I think we need to come back. If no one else has got any more comments on the report, can I just say that we accept the report, where we welcome the content, and you know, but we would like to make certain that the verified somehow, and that the report, if possible, gets nuanced to the 5 area committees. Are we all content that that's what's come out of the discussion? It appears that most people are indicating so. So I shall bring this section of the meeting to an end and thank Daljit for her very precise and fulsome response. And if she needs to go now, feel free. But you can always hang around and say our meeting should be properly conducted, Dalgit.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So the next one is overview and scrutiny, and it's the local transport plan 2021. And I would imagine that how we're going to handle this is we're going to have David Lawkes introduce it for us. Then someone else might speak to it, unless does the leader want to contribute first or at the end?
Can I just go first?
Of course you can. Of course.
Because I don't want to say very much. I just want to say this is I hope everybody's had a chance to read this, because I am incredibly proud of what we've achieved so far, and I'm very glad David's here to tell us about it. Thank you. Excellent.
So, Mr. Lawkes.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see you all. I think it's quite appropriate, really, to follow on from the COVID-19 response and recovery report with this report. It's obviously been quite a challenging year for us in delivering the LTP programme with everything that's happening with COVID. Just in terms of that and how it's affected us, certainly, obviously, initially we had the lockdown, and all of our concentration at that time was on the emergencies and the responsive repairs that we had to do. And we had a large number of staff then working from home immediately. We had some of the operative staff who had to shield because of their medical conditions. And we were also doing an awful lot of things for the rest of the council in terms of the whole response to COVID. So we had staff delivering food, delivering PPE. We had the car park closures in that early phase that we were involved with, both traffic management and monitoring all of that. And we had the opening of the town centres, all the signage, traffic management, taking out some of the parking bays and other things to make space for people so they could work safely in the town centres. We've done work around schools to try and make those better for people so that they had more space around schools when they were coming to school in the morning and leaving in the evening. We've done traffic management at the household waste recovery sites. We've had staff working, supplementing some of the refuse staff. And we've done the work assisting with some of the identification and getting some of the sites ready for the mobile testing units as well. So it's been a whole range of additional tasks that we've been doing this year on top of our normal tasks. On the delivery side, when everything initially started back in March, all of the capital works were suspended, and that was the case throughout April and May while we were doing those emergency and responsive repairs, and we were assessing what we needed to do and how we could do things differently to make sure that we could work safely for both the public and for our workforce, and to put all of the right processes and safe systems of work in place. We managed to start some of the capital works at the start of June. We prioritised the surface dressing programme because that's such a weather dependent programme to do during the summer. And we managed to start some of those capital works then. We worked through some trials, we changed some of the equipment, we changed some of the work processes during June across the rest of the capital programme, and then got all of that started by the end of June. And since then, we've managed to carry out a full operational programme, and some inefficiency because we've had to change some of the working methods of how people work together in close contact, doing some of the operations to try and avoid that close contact. But in general, a full operational programme that's worked efficiently and effectively. In terms of design office and the office staff, they've all been working at home all the time since March, with very, very rare visits into County Hall. And I think after some very initial problems with the IT systems and accessing all of the systems that we needed, that was resolved really quickly, and some great work by the IT department in that first 2 or 3 weeks. And that got us to a position where people can work very effectively from home and have done throughout. There's always a little bit of loss of efficiency in the fact that project teams aren't working in the same location, but in general, it's worked really, really well. And we've managed to overcome the issues that we've had. So it's not been easy times to deliver the LTP programme, but what I would say is that the managers and the staff have reacted and responded absolutely magnificently. They've been fantastic all the way through, both in terms of working in the way that we need to keep people safe, but also suggesting improvements and different ways of working. So that's been absolutely fantastic. It's a very large programme that we're trying to deliver this financial year. We've got the £18.5 million local transport plan, which was approved back in April. We've got £10 million of the overall £15 million for additional U&C road maintenance. So again, was agreed back in April. So we've got £10 million of that programme we're trying to deliver this year. And then in the summer, the Department for Transport gave us some additional money, gave us £11 million, and we've allocated £9 million of that money. And that was approved in August. So we're trying to work through that as well. What we did with that money was, because it would have been impossible to do a whole range of further additional projects this year, we actually, in most cases, have added to the existing projects and extended them, so that if we're going to those sites, we can work much more efficiently if we just extend lengths where it was appropriate, where the roads in the same area were in need of attention as well. We've also got our steel bridge refurbishment programme, where we won the Challenge Fund money from DFT, and that's a £4.8 million programme. And so we've got that to deliver as well. And then we've got other projects like Union Chain Bridge. So there's a huge programme that we have going at this year on top of what's happening with COVID. So just sort of some of the headlines from that. In terms of the road resurfacing, we've got about 40 miles of road that we'll be resurfacing this year. That's excluding the surface dressing and the microsurfacing. I think in the report it said we've got about 52 of those schemes done of the 168. I think that's now nearer 70 of the schemes, and we're working through those and hope to get those all programmed in for the rest of the financial year, weather permitting, depending on how severe the winter becomes. We've also got a wide range of patching, drainage, road marking that's all been dealt with through the area offices, and that's about a third complete at the moment. That was supplemented with extra money from the government programme in the summer. So we're doing a lot of extra work in terms of that patching and drainage, etc. In terms of the surface dressing and microsurfacing, that surface treatment programme, that's a £3.7 million programme, which is now completed. So we've now completed all of the surface dressing, which was about 48 miles of road surfaced, and we've done 10 miles of microsurfacing in the more urban areas. So again, that's really good to have got that completed through the summer period. We've got works going on to footways and cycleways, and resurfacing and lining a number of the cycleways that we've got in the county in areas where they deteriorated, trying to push more as we go forward with thinking about those sustainable travel areas, rather than perhaps the focus in the past has been more on the road resurfacing. And we've also done a sort of tube map way marking exercise in Cramlington to really flag up those cycleways there, and how people can get around and help people to understand how you can link from one place to another on those cycleways. In the report, it mentions about Kirkhoff Footbridge down over the River South Tyne, which has now just been reopened now. That was destroyed in 2018, and we've rebuilt that bridge, and that was just reopened in the last week or so. And Berwick Old Bridge, we're just starting now, commencing the works there, which is a major refurbishment of Berwick Old Bridge. So we're just starting that this week. I mentioned Union Chain Bridge as well earlier. That's a fantastic project. I don't know if any of you have really seen that project. There is a website specifically for it, but that's the oldest suspension bridge in the world that is open to vehicular traffic, and we are about to completely take it apart, dismantle it, and then rebuild it again so that by next year it will be fit for purpose, hopefully for the next 200 years going forwards. So that, again, massive project that we're carrying out. Mentioned the steel bridge refurbishment project. That's refurbishing 8 of our key steel structures, and that one will be starting in early 2021. We're at the moment in the design and procurement phase for that. So that'll be specialist painting contractors. We've done landslip repairs at Ovingham and Warden near Hexham and in Morpeth, and we are about to start ground investigations for the landslip at Todstead near Weldon Bridge on the B6344, which is a particularly difficult site, and about to start the ground investigations there. As well as all of those sort of maintenance things, there's obviously all of the integrated transport, the minor improvements and the safety schemes, and we're working through all of those. The report highlights a number of the areas where we've completed schemes. We're well on with the high-risk safety sites and the rural road schemes and making good progress on those. The 20-mile-an-hour schemes at schools, we're doing working through all of those projects. There's a huge number still to go at, but we are working through those and making good progress on them. I think there's about 40 being worked on at the moment, and we are looking to see if we can get all of that finished in next financial year, currently assessing where we're at with the overall programme. I suppose other projects that we're doing, just because there's always more, unexpectedly we were asked to do the road improvements at Ponteland on Callerton Lane, which is a part of the works for the new school and leisure centre there. It was expected the contractor would be doing that, but then it was considered it would be best if we did that work. So we've been doing that over the last 6 months, and that's just been completed in the last couple of weeks, ready for the school opening there at Ponteland. And that's a fantastic piece of work that the guys have done there. And also we're doing some work in Blythe in relation to the Town Deal project for a scheme where the government's given us additional money. So we're working on that currently in terms of design, ready to start after Christmas. So obviously a huge amount going on, difficult conditions in terms of coronavirus, but managed to get a huge amount of the work done and continuing to progress that. Where we can, we're getting additional resources in to help, but that's not always that easy because every other council is doing the same sort of thing, and so the resources aren't always available. But as I said, staff and managers have been fantastic, and we're progressing well with the programme overall. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of where we are, and happy to take any questions.
It certainly does, David. I've just noticed that Rick's sort of appeared on my screen, so I don't know whether he needs to, as his name's on the report, I didn't know whether he would like to add anything, or is he quite happy that it's all been covered? You need one, that's it.
Yeah. I think David's done a very good synopsis there, Chair, of the work the team have done. I would just reflect, it is a huge programme that they've had to deliver this year, or are delivering, and in very difficult circumstances. And I am amazed that it looks as if we will, by the end of the year, have delivered that entire programme. And I would echo what the leader said earlier, how proud I am of David's service. The brilliant.
Excellent. Right, questions? Councillor Gibson.
David, just a couple. Obviously we're in the 2021 financial year, therefore the 2021 LTP year. Have you got any chance of finishing what's on those lists for this year? By the end of April, do you think?
I think we will. I'm hopeful. I probably won't say confident because you can never tell what the winter weather's going to throw.
I would excuse the foul winter.
If in terms of the surfacing works, I think we're going to get very close to getting all of that finished, and a lot of the bridges works, etc. The minor improvements we'll get through a vast majority of it but those are always more difficult. I think it's just the sheer volume of them. They're all small. A lot of them need a lot of consultation and work through. So those are the ones that, you know, if there are any that will slip at all, it will be those types of projects is my expectation. But I'm hoping that we will get through the vast majority of the programme.
And I just have one other little question, and it is on small scheme items, but my question is, well, the costings seem to be unbelievable, but secondly, there seems to be a new cost that's been stuck on, because I did one and an extra £2,000 turned up for not a very big job, and I thought, you know, what's that for? And apparently it's for extra transport.
Mm-hmm.
The £2,000 for a tiny job is seems a little hefty.
Right. Clearly, I don't know the specifics.
Oh no, you won't know the job. But if you want any further detail, I wouldn't mind coming back to
that. Sorry, can I just interrupt here? If we're going to get parochial,
no,
I think it should be a conversation that's held between the councillor and the officer, rather than involve the rest of us, unless it is of an, you know, a strategic. If this is going to happen to every job, then perhaps we all need to know about it.
That's why I brought it up.
So carry on.
Yes. I mean, I don't know the individual circumstances of this, but I think it is worth making the general point that in order to maintain the services, and the neighbourhood services side of the directorate have faced this as well, because of the COVID restrictions and the need to socially distance and protect our staff that the chief executive mentioned in her first report. We are having to provide extra transport so the staff can travel separately to jobs. And it could be that this is part of the extra costs of that. So it is more expensive for us to deliver the service and keep our staff safe. I don't know if this is a particular circumstance in this instance, but that is a general point, and we are seeing that slight uplift in the cost of delivering the services.
Well,
I
hope it's just a standard.
Rupert, do you need to come back?
Well, as I say, I hope it's a standard fee, and we get a little bit back somewhere. Was it £2,000 for a small job? Seems quite a lot of money.
But can I, on the back of that, I have you, Councillor Heppel, on the back of that, could an explanation, when we're pricing these jobs, could we have a bit more of a detail in transport? You know, if it's a COVID-related expense, then it needs to be a COVID-related £2,000 COVID-related expense to transport X, Y, and Z, or whatever the case may be. And then, you know, then it's not a mystery, is it? Councillor Heppel, then Councillor Gallagher.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to really record some thanks. I mean, David, Michael, Russell, people like that have been very, very responsive to me and some of the queries I've had. So thank you for that. Just important to mention, you know, where credit's due. One of the issues that I've had, and I'm grateful for it, don't get me wrong, is microsurfacing of some of the estate roads. And that's a really good situation, because I get lots of complaints about that situation, about deteriorating, you know, estate roads. The difficulty is, I think, that we often get, once the work's done, there's a lot of complaints that I get about the standard, not realising, of course, and when I've talked to people like Russell, it takes, you know, 3 to 6 months potentially for that to settle down. What I wondered was whether, and I know we notify people before we do the microservicing, but is it possible to actually make people more aware of that before the work's done? I don't know if that's possible, but it's just a suggestion I would make.
Thanks, Alan, and I think that's a pretty good suggestion and a good question, because that's one of the things I have concerns about too. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just wanted to pick up on a few points that, well, basically on the back of what Councillor Heppel's just said about the micro service and dressing. Do we have any scrutiny around that particular process of work and what's its longevity. Because the reality is, you know, different roads seem to have different standards. And we need to, dare I say, fix it once and have a 10-year, 15-year lifespan. The surface dressing looks really nice once it settles in, but after a while you do find that it wears through very, very quickly, and it's only designed for certain roads. So, you know, I think we've really got to keep an eye on the surface dressing. I've had to get contractors back to do work in my ward, and if it's happening in my ward, it's happening in Northumberland county-wide. Coming back to one of the points that Rupert had mentioned there, and coming back to the chair's comment in previous meetings around the covert box, we should have a covert box on page 5 that says, you know, what are the restrictions and costs to this particular project around, you know, the LTP and planning. Another point that I would like to make is there a difference between the rural and the urban repairs, i.e. patchwork, potholes? Because the reality is I travel around Northumberland and I see different standards. I would like to think that there was a standard that was given to repairs on the highways. And the last and final point is there's a message to be sent out by Northumberland County Council around COVID-19. I had a visit up to Holy Island last week. I've seen 2 of our message type trailers there parked up, giving that information about crossings to Holy Island. Would they not be more useful to be on the main highways to get a message out that Northumberland County Council has got issues around COVID-19? And as much as I welcome the leaders' leaflets, that's just another way of getting the message out, utilising the tools that we've got. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to ask you, David, to respond on the...
We've answered some of that. Is Rick going to do it, is he? Or?
I can respond on those issues.
Okay.
In terms of I'll pick up on Councillor Heppel's first. In terms of the micro, it is always a difficulty that it is a process that doesn't look great when you first put it down, but when the traffic's bedded it in, it looks really, really good and works really well. We do put information in the letters and with the leaflet to people to explain that, but you know, everybody's busy and I don't think people often do manage to pick up on that, and we do get a lot of complaints in the first few days after it's gone down in a lot of places. So that's an area probably for us to have a look at again to see is there some more that we could do with that to try and get that message across. But certainly we'll do that. I mean, what the microsurfacing we're doing on estate roads in the past, a lot of authorities would have done as surface dressing, which is slightly different in terms of process, and that's what we do in the rural areas on the rural roads. But it's not really appropriate in the more urban areas because you end up with tar and chippings and people dragging them into their houses and whatever and all sorts of problems from that. So we stopped doing that many years ago. But the micros come along and it's a newer product. It's something that has been developed. It's been used across the country for many years. We've started using it more in the last 5 years, and it does do a good job. But again, with any process, it'll only be good as the quality of how well it's put down. It's done by external contractors, and we do carefully monitor what they do. And if they do have any failures, we will get them back to come and redo things. But like all these things, you know, it will only have a certain lifespan, as does any surfacing material that you use. It is something that we are, you know, constantly looking at, and we are looking at all of the different materials we use to make sure that they are, you know, the most appropriate material, and we will continue to do that with the micro. Coming on to Councillor Gallagher's question about difference in urban and rural repairs, the standard should be the same. We have different categories of road, ranging from the most important category 1 roads down to category 8, which are the unsurfaced tracks in country areas. But anything that's a category 1 or category 2 or whatever road, wherever it is in the county, should be tracked the same in terms of repairs that we do. But it may be that there are times when, because we risk rate the pothole repairs that we have to do, if it is a pothole in the urban centre on the main carriageway, we may need to get in there quicker in terms of response time to fix that, and therefore the repair we have to do is a quick repair that we have to get in and carry out to make sure that's safe. Whereas in a more rural area where there's less traffic, we may have a longer response time to get to that repair, which allows you slightly more time to prepare to do the response. But the general repair and standard should be the same across the county. We treat it as one asset. That's what we're looking at in terms of the overall road network. And just on the message boards, they have been used on occasions when we've had different messages to give out relating to COVID in different places around the county. The issue with them is that they are hired in, so they are a cost. So we had them in for quite a while. I think we had about 8 across the county with the message about COVID-19 during lockdown. But after lockdown, those were allowed then to be off-hired. So it'd be a question of working with colleagues in public health and communications. If they wanted those to come back in, we would hire them back in again.
Okay, Rick, you indicated you needed to say something.
I was going to cover the messaging point. I thought David could do the difficult technical stuff and I do the messaging, but he's covered that as well, Chair. So
excellent, well done. But on that point, so the message boards that are, this is me being parochial now, the message boards that are on Holy Island, are we expecting to remove them and having something permanent, or are they just there to kind of be a shock to people so they take notice of it? Because as we all know, you know, you put a sign up and people see it until they get used to it, and then they don't see it anymore.
I'm not quite sure if Councillor Gallagher was referring to ones that are about the tide tables, or whether there were specific COVID messages on those.
No, I think he's talking about at the moment they're saying, don't be an idiot. If you can see the causeway is covered, don't start to cross, I think is what he meant.
But Jed, just on the back of that, there was actually one parked up with a message about the tide, and there was another one parked up doing absolutely nothing. So the reality is, I understand now if they're hired in, but the reality is in these uncertain times, I think it's a useful tool. If that was on the A1 or dare I say the Spain Road, sending a message out, even if it's to, you know, around stress, around the Northumberland County Council hub, probably a similar message that we used to have with the tall ships going into Blythe, you know, giving information out, maybe washing your hands. It's the simplest thing that we can do, but the message may get there more often. Thank you.
No, we're drifting off the point, but we'll allow the Vice Chair to have his bit of latitude. So can we have Councillor Carty, who indicated there?
Chair, this is just a quick one. I'm not sure if it's David's responsibility, whoever. It's to do with the cycle track along the beach. I brought it up the other week with I'm forgetting who in county.
I have a response to that, Councillor Carty. I shall forward it to you.
The cycle track, it's horrendous. It's horrendous.
The answer is the same as microsurfacing. Give it 5 years and you'll never know that it's been done.
I know, but it's really dangerous. It's slippy when you're on your bike with this new gravel stuff. I think really needs to be looked at and reviewed as to whether you use that stuff in the future.
Well, all I can say is, and I'm sure David's going to say this, it'll wear up with time. David.
It's not one I've specifically been aware of. I think I've seen that there was a question asked, but it's not a project I've been directly involved with. But I will I will find out, because if it is causing any concern. So is it the new one that's just been constructed or resurfaced?
It's been resurfaced, David, and of course I cycle a lot. Went along the other day and I thought, oh, this isn't good, right? And obviously I'm on social media a lot.
I'm just going to stop you there. This isn't obviously David's area of expertise. I have the contacts. I have the email, because I asked the same question. After this, I shall find it and forward it on to you. And if you need to speak to the specific person, I'm sure you can. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right then, do we have anybody else about the LTP? It does not. So in summary, what I think is that we're all quite pleased to see that all the work's been done by our great staff, who, as usual, have conducted themselves in a very professional manner. We're more or less on track with this year's budget, which we're all, again, happy and content with. There's been one or two issues raised about the micro-surfacing, but apparently that's just how it is. And the only thing we will add to that is that the next year's LTP is going through the process of being set at the moment, and there are several workshops which are for councillors and officers to discuss things. And I think there's a timetable around somewhere. Each area will, it's not all 67 of us. I think it's broken down, David, isn't it? The area council level, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So please make certain that you get to those workshops and have your say about these specific things. And you can be as parochial as you like at those workshops. I believe that is true, is it not, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so look out for them. Thank you very much for your input this afternoon. And I think, unless anyone wants to raise their hand now, we are done. Leader, did you wish to add anything at the very end, or were you happy?
I would just simply say how beautifully that was chaired again. Have you filled many books recently? Over?
I am not that blatant these days, Leader. Thank you, but thank you very much for the plug. Right, and on that bombshell, we come to the last item on the agenda, which is urgent business. I have not been told of any, but I see that Sean has put his camera on, so I shall just leave the last few minutes of the meeting to him to have something interesting to say.
That'll be the day, Chair. No, I thought you were going to go on to the work programme.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad we're going on to the work programme. So, Sean, do you want to just take us through this? Sorry about that.
Just very quickly, there's two updates from the one that we presented earlier in the month. The enforcement overview and the antisocial behaviour overview will be considered by the committee in February. Alan, at the last meeting, you asked about active Northumberland. I have received confirmation the report will come through. I hope to be able to confirm a date next week, but it's looking like it might well be one of the 2 December dates. So other than that, Chair, I've picked up the other issues that were raised at the beginning of the meeting about the local area councils. I see Leslie's also on the call. Leslie looks after the local area council chairman's group, so I'm sure that will be picked up there. And also about making sure that you are better informed about decisions going through the process. I'll also pick that up through the chairman's group. Other than that, Chair, nothing to add.
Excellent. Does anyone else wish to have a say? Does anybody need to ask Sean anything while we're all together? No, it does not look like it. So thank you all again for taking your time in your busy lives to come and join us on the internet. It's always a pleasure to see you all. And at some point, I hope we all get to be in the same room together. That'd be great, wouldn't it? And in the meantime, I wish you all success and happiness. And I look forward to seeing you again in the not too distant future. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.